Okay, folks, good morning. Welcome back to real life. So today we are up to lecture number 8. It's the ninth of March. Is it the 9th today or the 8th? 9th. All right, so we've been talking about universities a lot in critical thinking. What is critical thinking inside the institution? I'm very concerned thinking about this word. Can you give me a definition of a translation of institution? The word institution. What is that? Anyone know? Someone? What kind of institutions are there? Let's start with that. Can you tell me, give some suggestion of what is an institution? Anyone? Definition of institution. Give me an example of an institution. Okay? Can you write some examples of institution on the board? Institution. What's that? Come on. What is another kind of institution? Give me an example of an institution. An example. Institution. World Health Organization. Okay, so this kind of one, World Health Organization, World Trade Organization, they are institutions of a kind of resented style. We built them. They maybe last, World Trade Organization has lasted for 70 years so far. No, 65. And the World Health Organization, I don't know when, but probably about the same. I have in mind things more like the kind of institution that a university is. What are some other examples like that? Okay? So I give you some clues. Hospital. We talk about the institution as something like, what do we do with a crazy person? You put them in a mental institution. Okay, that's where I should go, mate. Am I crazy? Send me to the mental institution or asylum. Red Cross is another one like this, yes. And also Red Crescent. You know Red Crescent? The Muslim version of the same, because cross is for Christian. Aren't they? And red crescent. And then there was also from what's red? Red Star or red hammer. Workers' Health Organization. But I don't mean today to talk about those institutions. I mean institutions like the university, the hospital, what else? Something like not a global one, but all societies have them. So it might be, let me think, the zoo. It's a kind of institution. You find it in every city. I don't think that's the definition, but the court. You can use the metaphor of institution to talk about some things that aren't institutions in this sense, like the institution of the family. But that's a bit political, ideological. If we talk about the institution of family, that usually means very conservative idea of the family. In British life, the traditional family is man married to a woman, and etc. Whereas that idea of the family maybe is different in other places, much larger, or not always man and woman, etc. But I think institutions like the organizations of society that are the building blocks of any, not just city, but any state. The parliament, the state, the parliament. In a democracy, you have the House of Parliament, or the Congress, or the White House, or the crown. Royalty in England would be an institution. You can use the metaphor of institute. What does it mean to institute something? It means to start something. To institute can mean to begin, to make something real, to make it begin. So we instituted the World Health Organization. We instituted the World Trade Organization. They were created to do something. What is another example of a recent institution that was instituted? Okay, something like ASEAN. Association of Southeast Asian Nations was created in the 60s to represent and meet. But institution, not the institute, but the institution usually means, in the general metaphor, a building, bricks and mortar, a building. So, a hospital or asylum, the courts, the courthouse, the university buildings, the parliament house, right? It's right there, the White House. Only for white people, not the Black House. So an institution, they are the building blocks of our society. So in this course, I want us to think very critically about what is an institution. What an institution does. So in our institution of the university, what do we want to do? We want to create critical thinkers. Good luck. So what we do, we have programs of teaching, we give you reading, we give you exercises to do. But the idea is to, give you some information, give you some knowledge, but turn you into workers in the knowledge industry or the institutions of knowledge. So that means you won't just work in universities, but you'll work in the courthouse or the hospital or the zoo doing research or commentary. And why do we want critical thinkers? Because in these institutions that are bodies of society, we want them to grow. We want them to be creative. We want them to do something that helps the rest of society. So we want the people who work in those institutions to bring new ideas, to be able to make connections and go, here's a solution or a problem, here's a new thing to do, here's a new idea. Yeah. In an institution, how many new ideas do you need? How many critical thinkers do you need? Do you need everyone to be critical thinkers? If everyone was a critical thinker, maybe nothing would get done. Everyone would be saying, no, I don't agree, I want to do this, I want to do that. Do you need to have some people that are not critical thinkers, that are good at just following orders? Probably we do. We don't say that. We want people to be able to think that critical thinking is also included doing the work that is necessary. So, in an institution like the university, you have lots of opportunities for debate, to disagree. You should have, in the ideal, you should be able to constantly argue about what is correct. You said that I don't know a critique of culture, but really he doesn't say culture is interesting. Somebody should say, no, he doesn't say that. He says, my interpretation is different. We should have a lot of argument. But actually, we don't have that many opportunities in other institutions for that. In the courts, yes, there is argument, but it's in cases. In the research, you know what a zoo is, right? How many of you have been to the zoo? One? Only one? How many of you have been to the zoo? You know what the zoo is, right? Lots of animals, cute animals, some ugly animals, the big rhinoceros, the giraffe. Is the zoo an institution for keeping animals that are cute so that people can come and be entertained? You go to the zoo and you see the bears or the tigers. But actually, we don't keep zoos just for entertainment. Right? Globally, in the world, the reason there are zoos is largely to do research on animals. To pay for that research, you invite people in to look at the animals. But really, what the zoologists are doing, if you study zoology in the university, what you do when you work in the university, you have to look after animals, but you work on issues like breeding, like endangered species, like looking after certain kinds of classification systems of animals, studying the procreation, the nutrition, the birth, life, death cycle of animals. The zoo is a research institution as well, but we don't see that as normal citizens or visitors. You don't go to the part of the zoo that's doing research, but it's there. Next time you go, you should look. But you know, researchers at the zoo, they have a possible income. They can show the animals, and the people will pay to come to see the animals. And that money is used for research. But if you don't have koalas, if you don't have penguins, if you don't have something that attracts people, the money goes down. You don't have so much money for research into endangered animal extinction events. And in fact, in many institutions, because there's no immediate proof that your research results in benefits for the country, research funding is going down. Governments have to cut because of economic crisis or whatever, and so less money goes to research. Or staff in institutions trying to do research are facing decisions that they have to make. Do you do research on something you're interested in, or do you do research on something that will lead to some benefit for the university, for the country, for economic reasons? Rather than just following your interests, you follow the money. Increasingly, this is creating, well, the divide. Those that are successful are the ones who are prepared to do research for industry, because industry will pay. Those who are left, people saying, why are you doing that? And I'm studying poetic metaphors in the work of Shakespeare for economic benefit. They have less funding. Studying ecology issues in the text of Robinson Crusoe or something like that, not any funding for that. Studying ways to increase rice yields in the Mekong Delta, yes, there's money for that. And do some research if it's funded. Now, learning to be a researcher, learning a field, an area, takes time. It takes a lot of work. Your degree takes 3 years, but to become a researcher, we did it a few weeks back, maybe it takes 15 years. To really be on the top of research takes a lot of time. And the governments and the industry that pay the funds for research don't want to wait 15 years. They want to invest and get a quick return. They want to invest in research and then in 1 or 2 years see some new patent, some new invention, some new thing. Now, the university knows that and it prepares researchers in advance. We're going to need so many physicists, we're going to need so many health researchers, and they get them ready. We think that probably society will need so many sociologists. So we are working on making sociologists. Whether they will or not, how can we know? We also think that we will need critical thinkers, because critical thinkers bring new ideas. And critical thinking is something like a transferable skill. It can work in sociology, but it can work in physics, it can work in other areas as well. But the real money for the university lies in a short-term investment. And it doesn't lie in funding critique. So academics may be saying, critical thinking. And what we're doing in the course of critical thinking, right, is gambling that we will leave critical thinkers in the future. I mean, I'm sure we need them. But also gambling that there will be employment for critical thinkers. That there will be institutions within which you can think critically and write critically. Not just write, I know, what other kinds of writing are there? Advertising, propaganda, advertisements, or boosterism, what we call it, boosterism. When you write boosterism, you write something that just supports your organization, not something critical. Questioning. Now, in this course, I want us to take this task of how you write critically inside an institution very seriously and practically. I want to set, because I have to send you assignments, I want to set assignments, or set a task that is about the institution thinking critically about itself. Now, all institutions do this in some sense. You have a kind of auditing system. But usually the auditing system, say in the university, is not done by the students. Oh yeah, you do a student survey at the end of each course. That's not what I mean. Do students ever really get to think critically or to write critically about their programs or about the institution as a whole? Of course you do think that. The very idea is, what am I doing here? That's the idea behind it. What am I doing here? What are we doing here? What is this about? But do you get a project where you do research on that? Do you do any writing about that? I mean, besides to your friends on Facebook. I don't see the point, or something like that. Or it was wrong or something. So, like last term, but slightly different, I want to talk to you about how this project will take shape in this class. Last time, I did this class, we just focused on the university. And I think maybe the institutions can be expanded. What else is there? University, hospital, asylum, courts, zoo. How come we don't have? What other ones are there? Courts, prison. That's a big one. Prison is an institution, part of society. Well, not really, sort of lost away from society, but yeah, a big institution. What else? School. So taking out the ones that we can't really study, or we could, but I don't want to study, we have things like this. the institutions that exist in society that sometimes are audited, but usually their audits are very carefully controlled, because from the institution point of view, you want to have some kind of check that everything is going well, that money is being spent in the right ways, but you don't want it to be too critical. It's about reputation management. What if the people who work in the institutions, don't mean just the auditors, what if everyone was involved in the auditing? What if a class of students could do research on how the university works? Or what if the prisoners in a prison would have a say about how to do research on how the prison works? What if the patients, not just the doctors, but everyone who works in a hospital could be health researchers? This would be the institution really thinking about itself. So one assignment we did last week that I want to send as next week's so-called like reading homework is that you will think about institutions, think about the university as an institution, and I want you to talk to, maybe we do this in groups of two with a friend and a partner. Yeah, okay. Groups of two or groups of three? What's better? Maybe even three people, okay. Groups of 3 people are nodding, 3 people. Each team will interview someone who works in the university about what they think about the institution. But when we say works in the university, I mean not a teacher, not a student. So you actually have to go and talk to someone who is not a teacher, not a student, who works at home and interview them. Just short, 1 page or something. And then we interview, reflect, and discuss, report. Okay. We're almost in groups of 3, sets of 3, 2. And you sit, talk with the people you're next to, think about who you might interview. If I send you out today, I'm not going to do it right now, but over the next week, or maybe we give 2 weeks for that, 2 weeks for this, think about who you would go and interview, who is not a teacher, not a student, but who works in the university. Has anyone got any idea who they might straight away interview? And how will you do it? Do you have an idea? Security. You're going to interview, say your group, let's say you work here. You're going to interview security. How will you do that? You walk up to the security man, hi. Do you have 5 minutes? So you've got to think about how you approach it. Then, what questions do you ask? Because security usually don't talk to students, right? So you have to think, how do I get them to talk to me? How do I get them to relax so they can feel comfortable talking to me? Not move along, not like there, or like plan wearing the uniform, etc. How do you have an actual conversation? And an issue, I promise you will be an issue, when you talk to the workers of the school, I think they are very likely to go to think, why are you asking this? And give you answers that they think you want to hear. Can you think of a question you might ask? Say you ask them, okay, you work here in security, how long have you worked in security? They say, oh, 15 years. Do you like working at Untitled? If they have worked here for a while, they are going to say, oh yes, very good. Untitled is another one university. But you know that's just the propaganda, right? And you write it down. But somehow you want to ask a question that is the truth. Not tell the truth. Tell the truth, but tell you something interesting. Now, sometimes you choose a worker who will have a story to tell, and they will want to tell it, and you won't be able to shut them up. Sometimes you'll pick the one person who really wants to speak to the students, who really wants to stop doing work for them, right? I'm so bored with cleaning. Yeah, I'll talk to these people for a while. Or they really hate their job. They might be the one person in the whole university that really doesn't like it. Or they might be a representative of a real problem. You need to think about the kind of questions you're going to ask and the kind of answers you might get. And what do you write down? Can you think of someone you might interview? Someone who is a good, what if that person was, okay, you can't interview the president. We have no president right now. What if you interviewed someone who is like in charge of Pizza? Or in charge of the swimming pool. Okay, the swimming pool. You go for a swim every day, not every day. Teaching people. Do we know what those guards, those swimming pool guards, think about their job? Do we know what they think about the university? It might be interesting to find out. Do you think they like students? Maybe they don't. Maybe you think they think. How do you find that out? Let's say you chose to interview the guys who run the swimming pool. Are you going to talk to that guy at the swimming pool? Maybe he doesn't like students. Maybe he thinks they are unclean or lazy or something. How do you ask a question about that? You say, what do you think about students? Hi, Mr. Swimming Pool guy. What do you think about the students who come to swim in the swimming pool? Do you like them? No. Why not? Why not? Noisy. Yeah, noisy, yes. Okay. Why do you think they are noisy? Aren't all swimming pools full of noisy children? The boy is laughing. I'm concentrating on this every year. Why did you choose to be a swimming pool guy? Yeah, so you can get a story from that guy by thinking on your feet, thinking critically about the responsibility, and starting a conversation. Could be interesting. All right, so what I want you all to do, groups of three. Three people. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Choose someone to interview. Think about what questions you'll ask them. Then go and interview them, and then write it out as a report to give back to the class. Share with us what you find out. Try to choose someone that we maybe haven't heard from. Who are the workers in the university? The electrician, the security guard, the swimming pool guy, the kitchen staff, the groundkeeper, the librarian. Who else? Builders. Last term, one group interviewed the cleaners. And what's very interesting is the cleaners are not the grounds cleaners. They are not employed by Tumble Pan. They are employed by a separate company. So, right? TDT is a contract to a company called Cleaning Inc. I don't think they're called Cleaning Inc. They're called something like Super Clean or something like that. And they then hire the cleaners. And these cleaners, we found out, their conditions are not good. No holiday pay, long hours, no tech bonus, etc., etc. Ask about these questions. How much do you want to find out is up to you. Do it for the university, but if you want to do it for somewhere else, you could too. But if it's a hospital, not a doctor, not a patient, or the prison, or the zoo, or courts, any institution. Okay, that's the assignment for the next 2 weeks. Now, you might have seen this before. Another kind of worker in the university that I don't think you should interview is just a research worker. Not a teacher, but a researcher. But it's interesting in the context of thinking about institutions to look at the research worker. Yeah, I got time to do this. If you remember, in the course Culture in the World, if you did that, I talked a bit about technology parts. I want to go much deeper today into that. Technology part, science part, or research part. That's what they call. We have them here in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. It's called Saigon Research Park. Okay? Now I'm here to tell you about them. In the second part, I will focus a lot on the plans for changing this city according to a new government scheme to develop a series of science parks in which researchers from the university will move off campus to new institutions. So they are instituting new series of science parks. In different parts of the city. And each one has a different theme. There's going to be an ecology science park. There's going to be a high-tech science park. There's going to be a sports science park. Or center, right? We say park because the ideology, if you remember from the first year, the ideology of these developments next to the university, they stress the building and the environment. So if you think of science, that means the lab, the test tube, the beaker, right? Bubbling chemicals. That's all pretty clinical and boring. But because a guy called Kenichi Ohmae, this man from MIT Tashi, in the 1950s came up with a theory that said the best way to bring new ideas into the sciences, develop new ideas for industry, is to get your scientists together and make sure they are happy, working in a nice environment, and meeting each other. So the ideology, the idea was to make new places for your scientists to work that are very pleasant, that are like parks. I mean, this is also the idea behind our campus. Right? Look outside. We are living in a kind of paradise, right? The most beautiful campus. Why? Why do students, why does a university need to be on a beautiful campus? A lot of money is spent, a lot of workers work very hard to keep this campus looking so beautiful. Why do we need that? Why not be like University of Social Sciences in District 1, building on top of building, kind of, maybe they've got 4 trees, but they do a lot of work. The idea behind it is that you will be happier and you will do better work if you are in a pleasant environment. A pleasing environment for the university will make for a better what? We feel better about it, we feel more comfortable, we feel freer to just think about poetry and critical thinking and philosophy. Do the trees make you think about sociology? No. But do they make you a better sociologist? Maybe, because you can relax a little bit and just concentrate on your work. Or actually get distracted from your work. But this was the idea of Kenichi Ohmae. Previously, like Oxford or Cambridge, they had very few trees, some grass, some trees, sure, but really they concentrate on the buildings, the beautiful old buildings they built. The lab was most important. But Kenichi Ohmae said, no, we need to look after the whole of the sciences, the scientists' body. His idea actually was not just that you have your labs in a nice campus, a nice environment, but you also give them very good food and give them very good entertainment. The model goes back actually to the Manhattan Project. Does anyone know what the Manhattan Project was? What was the Manhattan Project? Okay, where is Manhattan? Manhattan is in New York, right? You know that. This was not in New York. I don't know why. It was in Los Alamos, which is in Nevada. In Nevada. Los Alamos. And it was a ranch school. Ranch, right? The ranch school of Los Alamos. And it was really like a cowboy ranch, a school in a ranch. It was great for kids, right? Adventure time, horses, and it was a really great place for learning. But the United States government in 1941 took over that Los Alamos school in Nevada and made it the first, pretty much the first science park. A nice environment to work or to be as a student or school teacher or whatever, but they brought their scientists there. They got all the scientists from physics and astrophysics and chemistry and biology, kept them all together, had big lunches together, had teams, go to play game, get to know each other, and live there, never go off the campus. Their full life was inside. Like if you never went outside of TDT, you would be dedicated to academics, right? They had in this Manhattan Project, all their scientists dedicated to one thing. 1941 should have been a clue for you. When did America join the war against Japan? 1941. And what did they develop in this science park? It's where they invented the atomic bomb, the A bomb, which they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. The atomic bomb was developed in a science park, which was a new, offshoot from the university. Something like the same idea of putting your researchers in a park, in a nice environment. They took them together to this Los Alamos ranch, and they got them to work there for 4 years, never going outside, hardly ever. Okay, playing together, drinking together, working on this one project. How to make bombs that will end the war. Now, some people will say that actually America was winning the war anyway, the Japanese were ready to surrender, but they wanted to test this atomic bomb to show the Russians what they could do. So they used it anyway. That's by the by. I don't want to get into that argument. What's interesting is that the theory of having the innovative idea, the new creation of knowledge which the atomic bomb represents, was built on this idea of the science park. And then they did this with the aeronautics industry in Los Angeles afterwards in the 50s and 60s. The aeronautics industry in Southern California became the largest area of creative work in the world. And then the next wave of invention and innovation was so-called Silicon Valley. And it's the same metaphor, right? Science park. The park is a nice environment. Silicon Valley was in what's the area? Silicon Valley is in California state. It's in God, I forget. In California, in San Francisco, it's in this area here. Los Angeles is here. I was going blank. Sometimes that happens. Silicon Valley was where they brought scientists working on computer chips, brought them all together, made eventually what became the incredible sculptured garden in the universities of the Google campus, the Microsoft campus. Right? The idea behind the most innovative part of the companies of Google, Netscape, and Facebook, and Napster, and Microsoft were based in Silicon Valley on the model of a kind of university in a beautiful environment. And this guy, Kenichi Ohmae, was the theorist of that. He was at UCLA, worked for Hitachi and McKinsey, and his theory was, you don't want your scientists in the university just doing pure research. That's a waste. It will take too long. You want to get your scientists from the lab to go down and have lunch with each other. Have a nice lunch. Have a relaxing time, talk about ideas and be inspired. So you want to develop an environment where that frisson of excitement will happen. It's not about critical thinking. It's about engineering conversations that inspire. Very different approach to knowledge, and a very successful one. It has to be admitted, very successful. And in fact, it changed everything. We went from the single factory model of capitalism, kind of Fordism, the assembly line, to having the center of innovation as this brains trust in an environment, and then farming out actual production to export processing zones in countries that were prepared to do that kind of labor for cheap. You heard about export processing zones, right? Vietnam's got a lot of them. China has a lot, Korea has a lot. That was the model. You have your campus, for Google or whatever in Silicon Valley. You have those ideas, but then you send out to other countries the production of silicon chip or assembly of the computer of Microsoft, or your production goes elsewhere because you need massive capital. Your profit, your greatest profit doesn't come from production anymore, because everyone gets at the production level, everyone gets into production and competition. The real profit comes from having the new idea in the first place. The one who innovates, who sets the agenda, is the one that makes money. Why do you think Microsoft, iPhone, Apple, they hang on to those central creative hubs in Silicon Valley? They won't relocate those parts of their business to other countries. And other countries want them to do so. Vietnam's inviting that. Malaysia's inviting that. Giving them special tax breaks and deals and so on and so forth. But they don't want to leave. But they've introduced just-in-time production. Have the ideas and then distribute the production to wherever the workers are cheapest. Right now, Vietnam is benefiting from having fairly cheap workers that they can sell to companies like Nike or Google or Hitachi or whatever. Now, the government, of course, does that because it wants in the long term to get the ideas here. Get the brands here. Learn how to do that innovation. And we are making a series of science parks in Ho Chi Minh City exactly with that ambition to make a new kind of Silicon Valley in District 9, District 2. So this is the idea, this is my only published cartoon. This is the idea we are talking about. The difference between technology and art, bringing them together is the core idea of why we would now take the best researchers from the university out of the university and put them in the special economic zone, the science part, the research part, the research zone. In the next 10 to 15 years in this city, that's what will happen. It's already being planned. In Australia, we talked about this in the first year, we did this in the year 2000 with the Advanced Technology Park. Now the idea of the Advanced Technology Park in Chioma was really already there in capital. The innovative part of technology is not the production of the units, but putting together the idea, the innovation, the idea, putting together the concept of, look at the iPhone. When Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, do you remember what happened? No, you're too young to remember what happened. You know what happened. Steve Jobs came out and said, right, we've got a big announcement today. Before this, people didn't have, they had phones, and they had some Blackberries and things like that. Steve Jobs said, we are announcing some new device. We've got an announcement today. We're going to make the best possible phone. And everyone cheered, yay. Apple are going to do a phone. Yeah, it was the iPhone, the first one. We're going to do the best digital camera. Because Canon were making digital cameras, and they were really good, 2 million pixels and so on. So Steve Jobs said, Apple are going to do the best digital camera. And we're going to do a personal organizer. So people were buying these things, Sharp was the best one in those days, a little kind of unit, which was like a diary. And you could do a little bit of surfing the web, but not much on these things. We're going to make the best web surfing interface. And everyone's cheering. Wow, Apple are going to do a phone, they're going to do a camera, they're going to do a web interface. We're going to do so many more things in Apple. And then he goes, and this is it. It's a phone, it's a camera, it's a web interface. Everyone had thought Apple were going to make lots of different devices. And Steve Jobs said there was just one thing. And that was the innovation. They found a way to put all those things together in one package, and they branded it in a way that made everyone want that. That happened in Silicon Valley. Where did they make their phones? iPhone is produced China, Korea, Indonesia. It's produced outside of California because the workers are cheaper. That's the idea of a science park. You have made a profitable discovery or invention or breakthrough, and you hold on to control of that. The rest, which is only a smaller percentage of profit, you can farm out. Big preferential deals and so on. You still make some money from it, but the real world-changing innovation is what you look after and hang on to in that company headquarters. And that's in this science park. This has been going ahead without me allowing it, right? If you remember in the class, we talked about Chiyoma's activity in Melbourne, in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia. And this is the one. I don't know why it's not staying still. We're going to have a break now for 10 minutes. After the break, I want want to talk about the science park plan for Ho Chi Minh City. It's massive. There are like 6 new science parks going to take over the city. And there's a plan that is going ahead. All right, so 10 minutes. What's the time now? 10:32, so until 10:42. Come back at 10:42, we'll start again. Thank you.